Hey guys, Kevin here. Let's have a look at functions. So first of all, what is a function? Function is a block of code which can be run whenever you want. So let's say I wanna add two numbers a and b. Alright. So what I'll do is I'll write the code once that print c print like c equals to a plus b and then print c. Alright. And then whenever I want to do that with two values, I'll just call it once. I'll just be like addition bracket a comma b. Alright. And whatever the numbers are, they'll automatically I'll get the answer for them. So whenever you have, let's say, a complex block of code which you don't want to write repeated number of times. If you don't want to write it many times, what you can do is you can create a function, you can keep it up there, and you just have to put one line and you can call it. All right. Now in a function, let's say in the case of example that we took where we added two numbers a and b, the a and b that we pass to it. All right, over here if you have a look, this is the syntax for it. So define, so def for short for define, a functions func, that's func, that's the name of the function that we have given. We could give it addition, add, anything like that. Parameter is the variable name that you will be used inside the code block, right? So if I'm using a comma b over here, I'll write a comma b over here, right? If I'm going to be using p and q in the code, I'm going to be writing p and q over here. Doesn't matter whatever you pass through this. And then whenever you want to call the function, you'll just be like uh, add 5 comma 10 or 10 comma 15, whatever it is, and then you will be given the answer. Now let's code this once, right, and have a look at it in. So first we're gonna having a look at functions. All right, so let's say I wanna create an addition function. So I'll just write addition, all right, and define addition, and then we need two numbers a and b, right? I put a colon and then I'll write the code that c equals to a plus b, and then I could do two things. One is I could return c. Right, what that will do is that whenever I call the function, the value of that function will become the value of c. And other thing that I could do is I could do print c. All right, now print c, what will print c do is that whenever I call the function, it will automatically print it. So I'll just explain it to you. Let's say for now, if I comment this out and then if I call over here addition 5 comma 10, all right, if I were to run that, I'll get the answer as 50. Now if I were to comment this out and uncomment this, all right, and if I were to run that, return C would be there. All right, so what happens is this will assume the value of C, right? So then what I could do is I could add this with, again, with any number 15, and then running that will give me answer as 30. All right, earlier what was happening was it was calling the function and the function was just printing the value of c. Now what happens is that this entire clause, it assumes the value 50, right? And then 15 plus 15, 30 happens. If I were to do this, all right, I have to comment this, and if I were to run this, I would receive an error. Why? Because this is none type and this is an integer, we can't add them. So that was printing c, right? That would just give the command to print c, and this was assume return c would give this the value of c, right? I hope you understand that. So let's just comment this out, let's keep this, and let's run this, right? Now so over here, yeah, a and b are your parameters, right? And 5 and 10 that you have given over here are your arguments. Arguments can vary. Now if I were to write d over here, I'll need to change this to d, right? I need to keep these variables that are input same as here, right? Parameters need to be the same as they are inside the code block. This can be anything. Over here also I could give it p and q, and if I were to take input from the user, that p equals to int input, right, enter number 1, and then enter number 2, and then if I were to run this, just a second, uh, this will throw an error because we haven't defined q. Let's just interrupt this. Let's run this again. Enter number 1, let's say 10, enter number 2, 20, and you got the answer as 30. Alright. So no matter whatever you do, this the names of the parameters and arguments are, it's okay if they don't match. However, the variables used in the parameters should be the same ones used in the code. So now what sometimes happens is that you just take one input and the second one is a default, it's like optional. All right, so what I can do is, let's say I could do this d equals to 10. So what will happen now is that, let's say I want to add something to the, I always in a default scenario I want to add 10 to the number, right? But sometimes I don't want to add 10, I want to add 5. So what I can do over here is I'll just copy this code once, right? Let's remove this. All right, I'll just write uh, default parameters. All right, and d equals to 10 is given over here. All right, let's say that I just give the input of one number. All right, if I've given just the input of one number, I want that to be added by 10. Or else if I give the input of two numbers, I want those two specific numbers to be added. So let's say if I give over here 20, I expect the answer to be 30, which is 20 plus 10. All right, but if I were to give here the input as 20 comma 5, I would expect the answer to be 25. All right, what happened over here was, since we hadn't given a parameter in the first case to d, it assumed d to be 10 and a to be 20. All right, a better example of this could be that, let's say I call this a equals to good morning. All right, and d to stay over here, and then if I were to do Kevin, all right, yeah, one, yeah, sorry. So what needs to happen is it has to be d comma a and not a comma d, because that's how it works, and always the default parameter has to be ahead. Good morning Kevin was printed. All right, if I were to do this, yeah, good morning Kevin. All right, now if I change this to David and if I run that, I would always get good morning David. All right, now if I wanna wish them a good afternoon, what I could do is I could write good afternoon, and what that will do is it will print good afternoon David. What happened over here was D got the value of David, all right, and in the first case when we hadn't put a second argument over here, it automatically took good morning from here because it was a default parameter and it printed that. Now in this case, since we have already given good afternoon as the value of the second parameter, that is a equals to good morning, we have already good afternoon, we have already defined that. It ignored this value and it took this value and printed that. All right, so that is the concept of default parameters. All right, uh, let's move ahead. Now sometimes what happens is that you don't know how many parameters, how many arguments would be received, right? You don't know, you might receive 10, you might receive 15 arguments, you don't know how many arguments you're going to be receiving. So in that case we can use a asterisk over here. All right, so what we can do is can put an asterisk over here. Right? Let's remove this, right? And what we can do is, let's say I give an input of multiple numbers and I want them all to be added. So what I can do is I can say sum equals to 0. All right, and for I in a, right, uh, sum equals to sum plus I, and uh, return sum. What this will do is that if I let me just show it to you. I put 5 comma 10 comma 15 comma 20 comma 30. All right. Now I expect the answer to be 50, 65, 75 and 80. All right. Let's check if it's true. Yeah, there we have it. The answer is 80. What happened was that 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, they got inputted as a tuple. We'll study tuple further in the future in the next episodes. What happened was this went as a sequence as the input into the function. And then what we did was we took a for loop where we said that for I in the sequence A, for each time 5 10 15 20 30 was inputted. So first I assumed the value 5, sum became 5, then i's value became 10, the sum became 5 plus 10 which is 15, then I value became 15, 15 plus 15 equals to 30, 30 plus 20, 20 plus 30. All right. So and then at the end sum was returned. So when you don't know how many parameters you have, how many arguments you have, you can use an asterisk. All right. Also, one important thing that whenever you are writing a function, it is recommended if you put triple quotes, all right? Uh, yeah, and then you write this function will perform addition of all the numbers given as input. All right, so this is known as the documentation string. What that does is that if let's say I'm reading your code, all right, now I don't want to go through all the code, I just want to see what that function does. The first line is a documentation string which will tell me that what this function will do, right? So it's easier for me, and I can even skip it if it's not important. Let's say I'm making a code and I'm receiving an error, all right, I show it to my senior, and then he's like, all right, the error is with this part of the code, so I'll just go to the function which deals with that part. So what I'll do is for the multiple functions defined over there, I'll just read the documentation strings and ignore the ones that don't matter to me. All right. So that's very important practice. It's appreciated as well, and it's an ease of access. All right. Next thing is that sometimes what can happen is let's do another thing. Let's create another code. Let's write that keyword arguments. All right. Now, until now, in this example, A and D did not matter, right? We could do anything with them. Now, sometimes what you can do is that let's have multiple of them, all right? And right, so in this scenario, if I were to do a multiplication sign over here, if I were to do a division sign over here, now I want to give them in a particular order, all right? uh, Over here it is A D C E F, right? But I want to give it A C D E F, right? What I can do is I can do A equals to 10, D equals to 5, E equals to 30, F equals to 20, and C equals to 12. All right. Now what this does is that let's say I wanna give specific variable names. This will do the job properly. It will give these names to 10, 5, 30, 20, C and 12. Now this is not in the order in which we gave it above. If I were to do this, let me just take this, and if I remove all of these terms, what will happen is the value of 10 will go to A, the value of 5 will go to D, the value of 30 will go to C. However, we want the value of 12 to go to C. Alright, so that will create an error, that will create a wrong output. So if you see over here, the two answers that we receive, let me print them both. So let me do this, print, and then print over here as well. Each time the answer that I get will be different because the value of C got changed. Also, the value of E and F also got disturbed due to that. Alright. So that is called a keyword argument where you specify that this value should go to this parameter. Alright. Now again, similarly, when you don't know how many keyword arguments are gonna come, what you can do is you can put a double asterisk. So I'll put a double asterisk A over here, alright? And let's say I just wanna deal with the addition of D and F, alright? So what I'll do is I'll write A, then D, and then A, and then F. What happens in this case is so what happens in this case is that the parameter receives the input as a dictionary. All right, dictionary is also something that we're gonna explore further ahead. But what it does is that it creates a key and a value. All right, so D and 5 go inside as a dictionary element, and then you can just access them using by calling them. All right, when we study dictionary, I'll explain this again. All right, but this is how keyword arguments, when you don't know the number of keyword arguments, work. So let me just copy paste this and so alright, so there you have it. Your notes are complete. Um, so now let's have a look at recursion. So what recursion basically is that you take a function and then inside the function you're calling it back, right? So that goes around and around until a specific condition is kept. If you don't keep that condition, it enters into an infinite loop, which is not desirable because that will consume a lot of your processor power, and it won't lead to anything specific because infinite loop keeps on going till infinity and you don't get an output. All right, so let's go to a coding space. Let's write recursion over here and let's create a function. We are going to be making a program. We are going to be making a function which determines the factorial of a number. Now, what is the factorial of a number, you might ask? If I were to, let's tell you that find me the factorial of 5, it is just the multiplication of 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, right? Any number, its factorial is the multiplication of all the natural numbers below less than it, right? So let's create a function fact, and the input will be n. Then while the value of n is greater than 1, all right, we're going to be returning n into fact of n minus 1, all right, and else if that is not true, we're going to return n, all right. So let's say I put the number 5 in this. 5 is greater than 1. So what got returned was 5 into factorial of 4, because 5 minus 1 is 4. Now factorial of 4 was gonna be calculated. So 4 was the input, 4 into 3. 3 was the input, 3 into 2. Now when 2 was the input, 2 into 1. And then when 1 went as input, it returned 1. Alright, because 1 is not greater than 1, so it returned 1. So now the value of factorial of 1 was 1. So then 1 into 2, and then 2 got returned. So it just went back traced it. And then let's run it. Acha, oh, first we'll need to like call the function as well. So let's write factorial of 5. Let's run that. And there we have it. Can have the answer as 120. If I want to do factorial of 3, that should be 3 into 2 into 1, which is 6. Into 6, 10. It's the answer that we desire. So that was recursion. Now the last thing we have is lambda functions. Now what are lambda functions, you might ask? When you have a small function like the one we had, that was a plus b, it doesn't make sense that you define a whole big function for that. So what you can do is that instead of defining a function properly inside the main code, what you could do is you could write that s, right, or sum, right, I'm just putting a double m over here, sum equals to lambda x uh, and then let's put a colon over here, x, and then x into 2, or x raised to power 2, right? What this will do is that whenever I write something like sum bracket 5, it should give me the square of 5, or the square of input, which is 5 square, which is 25. Let's run that. It's 25. So in a lambda function, the syntax is that you write lambda over here, you write the parameter, all right, the parameter that we entered over here, n, and then the one singular line of code that you have, you do that, and that gets written automatically. All right. Now if I were to replace this with a cube, I would get 125. All right. Now where this is helpful is that obviously in such cases like where we were defining a whole function for just adding two numbers in the first case, we can obviously do this. This will occupy less memory. This will be helpful as well. So the best way to use lambda functions is to, use them inside other functions. All right. So let's say I want to create a master function which creates small lambda functions for me with different purposes. All right. So let's say what I want to do is I want to create my own small lambda functions like x square, x cube, x raised to power 4, x raised to power 5, that they do all of these things. All right. Inside a function which uses lambda functions. So what I do is I define a function called master, and I give the parameter as n. Then what it does is returns me a value. It returns me a function, a lambda function, with the parameter x, where we find the value of x raised to power n. Right. So if I were to give the value of n as 2, it will give me a lambda function which gives me the answer as x square. All right. And if I were to give the input as 3 to master, it will return a lambda function which gives me the cube of the given argument. All right. So this is how it works. I write uh, squarer, all right, equals to master to cuber equals to master 3. All right. And what I do is I do print squarer where the argument is, let's say, 5, and I print cuber where the argument is, let's say, 10. So I should receive 125 and 1000 as the answer. Yeah, and 25 and 1000 are the answer. What happened over here was when you gave master and the argument is 2, the 2 went over here, and lambda x, where x raised to power 2 is computed. That was the value of that. This was given to squarer. All right. And then when you put 5 as the argument in squarer, the value 5 was assumed by this. All right. So what happened over here was, if I were to comment this out, hashtag squarer equals to lambda x raised to power 2, right? And in the case of cuber, what happened was we got cuber equals to raised to power 3, and then when squarer with the argument as 5 was given, x assumed the value 5, and then 5 square was computed. X assumed the value 10, and then 10 cube was computed. All right. So this is the proper use of lambda functions. All right. So let me just write this as uh, using lambda functions as anonymous functions. All right, inside a function. So I guess that's it for functions. Thanks for watching, guys. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see more of such tutorials. Give me a follow on Twitter at @KevinPKaria. And if you have any queries, feel free to send an email at ask.kevinpkaria@gmail.com.